All right, let's start with the golden elephant in the room. Literally gold. Burkina Faso, a landlocked nation in West Africa, isn't just a random name you hear once in a geography quiz and forget. Nope, this country is sitting on a glittering fortune, gold reserves that fuel its economy like jet fuel powers a 747. In fact, gold has become Burkina's largest export, accounting for almost 80% of foreign earnings. Forget Silicon Valley startups. This is the kind of liquid asset that can make or break entire governments. Now, why does this matter? Because for decades, foreign companies, mostly Western giants, have had their hands so deep in Burkina's gold mines, they could practically change their LinkedIn titles to unofficial minister of mining. These companies pocketed billions while the country itself was left with crumbs. And crumbs don't build hospitals, pave roads, or put food on tables. Enter Captain Traore, the young, military-style leader with a vision: stop the endless siphoning of national wealth. In late 2023, his government announced a plan to nationalize key mines and set up a domestic gold refinery. This wasn't just policy, it was a middle finger to decades of foreign dominance. By mid-2025, those words became action. New gold assets were transferred into state control under SOPAMIB. That's Burkina's state mining company. Translation: the gravy train for foreign corporations suddenly hit a wall. And if you thought that wall was big, wait till you hear about the ticking time bomb Traore set off next, the infamous 72-hour ultimatum. Trust me, it makes Mission Impossible look like a Sunday picnic.
Every ultimatum has a clock, and this one ticked louder than a bomb in a spy movie. The 72 hours were running out, and the big question was, who's going to fold first? Would foreign corporations back off quietly, or would Traoré have to actually pull the trigger on his threat? Behind the scenes, panic was brewing. Think of it like a poker game where the young guy at the table suddenly goes all in with a mountain of chips. The seasoned sharks around him freeze, wondering if he's bluffing or if he's holding four aces. That's exactly how Washington, Paris, and a whole lot of mining CEOs were staring at Burkina Faso. Now here's the twist. Officially, no one admitted to folding, but the silence itself spoke volumes. Leaks suggested that some companies paused operations, others requested clarification, and at least a few quietly yanked their representatives out of Ouagadougou faster than you can say evacuation flight. Meanwhile, Traoré doubled down. He didn't blink, flinch, or stutter. In fact, he almost seemed to enjoy the global squirming. By refusing to budge, he made one thing clear. The ultimatum wasn't a bluff, and that left the so-called big players with two choices: retreat or risk open confrontation in Africa. Guess which one they picked? But hold up. When the smoke started to clear, people asked a dangerous question. Was this whole showdown the real deal, or just a cleverly staged spectacle? Welcome to the deepfake dilemma. Here's where things take a Black Mirror twist. While the ultimatum drama was unfolding, the internet was doing what it does best, flooding timelines with memes, fake clips, and enough conspiracy theories to power a Marvel spinoff. Suddenly, videos appeared showing Trump allegedly ranting about Burkina Faso's gold, giving his own deadlines, even threatening action. And guess what? A lot of those were AI-generated deepfakes. That's right, the same technology that can swap Nicolas Cage into Disney movies was now messing with geopolitics. Fake Trump audio, fake speeches, fake secret meetings in Mar-a-Lago. At first glance, people were like, whoa, is this World War gold? But experts quickly flagged the content as manipulated. Still, the damage was done. Confusion spread faster than fact-checkers could type. This begs the question, was the ultimatum itself being amplified by deliberate disinformation campaigns? Because nothing spices up a political standoff like a cloud of half-truths. While the deepfake frenzy made headlines, the real story was still unfolding on the ground. Burkina Faso's government was seizing assets, and foreign companies were feeling the squeeze. That part wasn't fake. So we're left with two overlapping dramas: the real showdown between Traoré and foreign powers, and the digital circus spinning parallel narratives. It's like trying to watch a football game while your TV glitches into a soap opera every 5 seconds. You can't always tell what's real. And yet, even if the internet was drowning in fakes, the gold itself was 100% real. Which brings us to fact 6. Burkina Faso's shiny new pride and joy, a homegrown gold refinery. If you want to understand why Traore's ultimatum had teeth, you need to look at Burkina Faso's domestic gold refinery project. Imagine this. For decades, the country mined gold but had to ship most of it out for refining, like growing crops only to let someone else cook and eat the meal. Not exactly a recipe for sovereignty. That changed in late 2023 when Traore's government fast-tracked plans for a state-backed refinery. By 2025, construction was underway and the first shipments of domestically processed gold were rolling out. Suddenly, Burkina wasn't just digging holes in the ground, it was controlling the entire supply chain. That's like going from being the guy who sells cocoa beans at a discount to becoming Willy Wonka himself. Here's why it matters. Refining gold domestically doesn't just boost profits, it rewrites the balance of power. Instead of foreign corporations dictating terms, Burkina Faso now decides how much gold to refine, how to sell it, and who gets the contracts. It's economic independence dressed in glitter. But it's also symbolic. For a country plagued by poverty, coups, and insurgencies, a refinery isn't just a factory, it's a statement. It tells citizens, we're taking charge of our destiny. And it tells outsiders, don't even think about treating us like a resource colony anymore. So when Traoré dropped his ultimatum, it wasn't empty bluster. It was backed by infrastructure, planning, and a golden ace up his sleeve. And speaking of aces, what happens when you bring other global powers into the game? Because, spoiler alert, it's not just the US sniffing around Burkina's treasure chest. Let's talk Russia, China, and the cold, hot gold game in Fact 7.
If you thought the US was the only contestant in this high-stakes treasure hunt, think again. The global chessboard doesn't leave any squares empty for long. Enter Russia and China, two players who never miss an opportunity to turn Western stumbles into golden opportunities, literally. Burkina Faso's new alliances weren't exactly subtle. Moscow started offering military support and training, while Beijing waved investment deals like shiny candy. For Traoré, this was perfect timing. Imagine being at a yard sale where one buyer storms off angrily and two new bidders walk in with fat wallets and grins. Suddenly, your bargaining power skyrockets. Russia's angle? Weapons and security, something Burkina desperately needs to fight insurgencies. China's play? Infrastructure and mining partnerships. Neither country hides its hunger for gold, but here's the kicker. They tend to present their deals as partnerships rather than outright extraction. Whether that's just clever branding or genuine strategy is up for debate. The result is a new Cold War, but not over nukes this time. It's over resources, influence, and who gets to cash in on Africa's glittering potential. And while the U.S. fumed, Russia and China pulled up chairs to the table Traoré set. Transition hook. Now, before you think this is just about shiny rocks, let's pump the brakes. Because the real heart of Traoré's gambit wasn't gold at all. It was sovereignty. And that's our golden fact 8. Sovereignty, not just bling. Here's the thing. Gold is the headline, but sovereignty is the plot twist. For Traoré, controlling the gold wasn't just about filling government coffers. It was about showing Burkina Faso could finally set its own rules. Think about it. For decades, African nations have been treated like the resource ATM of the world. Swipe your card, grab your minerals, and leave. Little attention was given to whether locals benefited. Traoré flipped that script. By suspending export permits, nationalizing mines, and launching a domestic refinery, he wasn't just tweaking policy. He was rewriting the rules of the game. This is why his ultimatum hit so hard. It wasn't merely hands off my gold, it was hands off my country. It sent a message to every Burkina-based citizen, we're not going to stay in the shadow of old colonial patterns. Suddenly, the narrative shifted from survival to pride. That's not just politics, it's identity. And let's not forget the ripple effect. Other African nations, Niger, Mali, even Ghana, are watching closely. If Traore pulls this off, it sets a precedent. Africa can hold on to its resources and demand fairer partnerships. If he fails, critics will point and say, see, you can't break free. Stakes don't get higher than that. And but great pride comes great paranoia, because when you start rewriting the rule book, you also start making some very powerful enemies. Which brings us to fact 9. Watch your back diplomacy. If sovereignty is the prize, then diplomacy is the battlefield. And let's just say Traoré has turned that battlefield into a minefield where one wrong step could blow up everything. Here's why. Global powers don't like surprises. When you nationalize assets and block billion-dollar projects, you're not just flexing, you're poking bears. And in geopolitics, those bears bite back with sanctions, covert pressure, or sudden advisories that scare investors away. Burkina Faso is already under Western scrutiny for its pivot towards Russia. Combine that with a gold ultimatum, and suddenly you're on half a dozen watch lists. At the same time, Traoré has to play nice with his new friends. Moscow and Beijing might smile for the cameras, but they're not charities. They'll want favorable terms, repayment and resources, or loyalty down the line. In other words, Burkina may have escaped one trap only to risk stepping into another. Diplomacy here is like walking a tightrope across a pit of alligators. One wobble, one misstep, and splat. Your lunch. Traore knows this, which is why every public move is paired with back-channel talks, subtle concessions, and strategic ambiguity. It's not just about winning the fight today, it's about surviving tomorrow. And that brings us to the big finale, Fact 10. After all the drama, deep fakes, and diplomatic gymnastics, what's the ultimate lesson in this golden saga? Here's the final truth bomb. This isn't just about Burkina Faso, or Traoré, or even Trump. It's about a global shift. For the first time in a long time, African nations are asserting control over their resources and daring the world to deal with it. The secret that got exposed wasn't just a shady deal. It was the fragile illusion that small nations can't stand up to giants. Traoré proved that with guts, timing, and just enough leverage, you can stop a global power dead in its tracks. And even if you don't win outright, you can change the conversation. What happens next? Well, it's a choose-your-own-adventure story. Burkina Faso could become a case study in sovereignty, inspiring other nations to reclaim their resources, or it could collapse under the weight of sanctions, pressure, and internal instability. Both paths are possible, and both will shape Africa's future. But one thing is sure. The days of quietly extracting African wealth without resistance are numbered. Whether through ultimatums, refineries, or alliances, the tide is turning. And that's bigger than gold. It's about dignity, independence, and rewriting history. So, if you've been watching the saga thinking it's just another headline, think again. This is history in motion, and you're watching it unfold in real time. And there we have it. 10 electrifying revelations from Traoré's 72-hour ultimatum that rattled Trump's gold push and reshaped the global game. From buried deals to deep fakes, from Russian chess moves to Chinese checkbooks, from sovereignty to survival, this wasn't just a story. It was a wake-up call. And here's the kicker. It's still unfolding. By the time you're watching this, new deals might be signed, new leaks might surface, and new players might be stepping onto the stage. That's why staying informed matters. Not just skimming headlines, but actually connecting the dots between power, money, and politics. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Traoré is a hero rewriting Africa's destiny, or just another strongman playing a dangerous game? Drop your take in the comments. I'll be reading. And hey, if you enjoyed this roller coaster ride through geopolitics with a side of sass, do me a favor, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next wild twist in the saga we call world politics. Because let's be honest, when leaders start throwing around 72-hour ultimatums like Uno reverse cards, you know the next chapter is going to be just as crazy. Until next time, stay sharp, Stay curious, and remember, in the game of gold and power, the real treasure is knowing what's actually going on.